Welcome to the Performance People podcast, brought to you by Ainslie and Ainslie, which feels weird this time because the other half is sitting across the way.
It's really nice of you, by the way, to invite me back in.
I sacked you. I did have to sack you because you wouldn't turn up on time. There were too many interviews to do.
I was really rather busy.
There were too many interviews to do, and you just somehow found a way to wriggle out of most of them, except for the ones that really fascinated you, of which, strangely, you could always make time.
Well, I'm sorry, I had a bit on, but
anyway.
It's really nice of you to involve me. Thanks.
Anyway, this is the Performance People podcast, brought to you by Ainslie and Ainslie, helping you with your sleep, rest, and recovery. On today's pod, him.
Called him a fucking wanker under my breath. And people that I know, the response to the team was just, I walked around the other side of the boat and the guys were like, yes, come on.
Because there'll be a point where you just cannot be on the boat anymore.
You know, the honest answer is it's...
You don't know.
I don't know, but the honest answer is it's the team are going to win it, you know. It doesn't matter whether I'm on the boat or not. I can't tell you how tough a moment that was. You know, the boat was upside down, it was on fire, it was sinking. It certainly gave me a lot of confidence when I saw how the team responded to those incidents, that we had a team and they could respond to setbacks and no one was going to panic and run for the hills. So, you know, we set the team up 10 years ago to win the cup. We're 10 years in. Each time we compete, we're getting one step closer. So the goal now is at least one more go around and get the job done.
So it's around about a month, almost exactly a month since we bowed out. Do you like that?
I did. I thought you've been thinking about that one.
No, actually, like literally just then.
Oh, yeah.
But there'll be plenty more where that came from. So from the America's Cup, I guess what I thought would be nice for people to sort of hear and understand from you is, what are the key lessons that you learned from that campaign? I mean, by your own admission and definitely by mine, we talked about it, you know, a lot between ourselves, but that was the most intense period of time I think that either of us have ever been through in terms of just the work. It was full on, wasn't it, in every aspect? So let's just sort of reflect on it and talk about how you're feeling a month on and what your sort of immediate reflections are, and then track back throughout the competition a little bit and give people some insight into what it's like to be in the melee of all of that. So first off, just a month on, how are you feeling about it all?
Yeah, I think still in some ways trying to download what happened, and it does take time. And you're right, it was just such an insanely intense period for everyone involved. And, you know, certainly from my own perspective, I don't think I've ever experienced anything quite like that. And
in what way, though? When we say intense, what do we mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Well, just the competition itself. When you're a challenger that goes all the way in the cup, of course, you're racing for longer than anyone else. So in the end, you know, from the preliminary event in end of August all the way through to the end of the cup, was pretty much non-stop. I mean, there's maybe a couple of days there we weren't sailing, but even on the days that we weren't sailing, from a management perspective, there was still a hell of a lot going on. And of course, even for the rest of the sailing team, well, the whole team, in terms of just the days off the water, prepping the boat, the maintenance, getting the simulator, figuring a whole load of stuff out. So yeah, it just didn't stop. And of course, the 3 years building up to that was pretty intense in itself. So that's kind of insane, really, when you look at the intensity and the pressures, and then taking some time to reflect on that, and of course figure out what happens next. And that takes time. I think probably I'm still going through that process.
But you sort of described the intensity from a workload perspective of having to be, you know, on the shop floor doing everything that needs to be done in order to get that boat on the water and do what you need to do to be competitive. But what about up here? Because those are the sort of lessons that definitely, if people are watching this who have a business perspective or are coming from a business perspective, you know, that sort of mental toll that intensity and that period of time can take on a person where you don't have a day off. And if you do take a day off, you feel terribly guilty about it because you know there's a hell of a lot of stuff you've got to be actually doing. And the balance that it's the imbalance of that rather than the balance of that. So how do you get yourself through it? Do you just go, this is the mission, this is the task, I've just got to throw the kitchen sink at it and I can't ever think that I didn't?
Yeah, it was pretty much, I mean, like I said, the whole campaign was intense, but the last 3 months was incredibly intense. And I kind of liken it, and I feel a little bit fraudulent in saying this because I've never been to war. I had no idea how horrendous that must be. But you kind of feel like you're at war, you know, because you don't have any time off. Every second that you have, you're just focused and working on the race, really, and trying to survive. And then ultimately, if you do survive, to the cup itself, winning the cup. And that's what drives you. And I think that's what drove the whole team. It was incredible to see how everyone in the team stepped up through that period and just worked their backsides off to make it happen. And yeah, it's a proud moment because you can't ask for any more than that from the team. I think they were amazing.
And so just tracking back then to sort of as that 3-month period got underway, because there are years before that leading up to this moment, but just heading into those preliminary regattas, when you know you don't have the boat to win the cup in that moment, it's not to say you won't have it later as the campaign goes on if you last that long, but in that moment when you know you don't have the boat to win it, and John Bertrand talked really well about this on a previous podcast with him about the fact that very often the boat that wins the America's Cup is not the boat that's, quickest at the start. How do you take people with you on that journey to get them to understand it? Because the first thing the press are going to do is try and, tear shreds off you for the fact that you spent all this money, you got an amazing campaign full of brilliant, genius people, Mercedes are on board, Jim's backing it. How do you take people on that journey with you to understand, to educate that first race is not going to be the thing that determines who wins the cup?
Yeah, I guess there's two key elements to that. There's one is internal and one's external. And internally, we talked about it a lot as a team. We'd also been through quite a number of setbacks in the 3 years building up to the competition. We had some poor showings in the preliminary events in the AC40s. We had 2 really serious incidents in one with the test boat and one with the AC40 where both boats nearly sank. And that required a massive turnaround from the team. And I think that certainly gave me a lot of confidence when I saw how the team responded to those incidents, that we had a team and they could respond to setbacks and no one was going to panic and run for the hills. So when we started off slowly in the prelim event in particular, I wasn't panicking and the team weren't panicking. That was great to see. Externally, it was very different. We had a lot of criticisms from people on the fringes, from, sailing journalists, the media, and that's what's difficult to, ultimately you can't really educate these people. It doesn't matter how many times you tell them that this is a development game and it's the boats that are the fastest at the end of the cup that will win out, rather than who's necessarily fastest right now. People aren't going to listen and they're going to take the opportunity to have a pot shot, and you just have to accept that and make sure that the most important thing is it doesn't impact the team or affect the team,
I was going to say that because as the leader of the team, it's a bit like being an editor of a magazine or whatever it might be. Ultimately, you've got to take the heat and you have to sit in those press conferences or in front of journalists or whatever else. And it's what you say that sort of then the rest of the team take their lead from. How much of what you say is what you really feel to the journalist, and how much of it is just bolstering the team behind the scenes to make sure that they don't lose faith or confidence in the campaign either?
Normally, I try to be pretty straight up with the media. I'm not really into playing games necessarily, and it's pretty much what you see or what you hear is what you get with me. But there are a couple of times where you have to make sure that the message is right for the team. So if you're getting criticised, that you're strong on the capability of the boat, the performance that's still to come, and I think we were very clear with our messaging on that straight away when the performances weren't that great in the preliminary racing and the early stages of the round robin. We were clear that we had the confidence in the boat and that we could pull that together and get the results. And ultimately, that's what's if you're gonna be strong on that line, you got to back it up. Otherwise, it's going to get awkward. Thankfully, we backed it up, and you know, the rest is history.
There are a couple of moments though, aren't there, where you probably would have had to many times where you have to have an all-team meeting. You had them regularly every week, but where you have to sort of set the right tone for that as a leader to the rest of the team. And how do you sort of navigate how much to tell them and how little to tell them? Because you're in a double role. You're sailing on the boat, so you're part of the sailing team and leading the sailing team. And then you've also got that extra role, which is the CEO of a business. So you're responsible for the whole picture and the bigger, broader view. So how much do you sort of let them into what's going on behind the scenes, and how much do you shield from them?
Pretty much everything's on the table. You know, you have to have a lot of trust in the team, and you have to share with them what's happening on and off the water. And if you do that, then in my experience, you find you get a lot more buy-in, and people are prepared to put the work in. It's if they don't really know what's going on, and that's when you get lots of whispering around the edges and miscommunication. So no, we were pretty honest and straight up with the situation and how we felt, how I felt, and very clear that we had the potential and that we could get there, and that the work that everyone was putting in, or had put in the 3 years in the build-up and were putting in through that really intense period was working, and we were getting there. And I think they could see that as well. They could sense that. And there were some key moments in the round robin stages. Obviously, winning the sail off to be the top challenger at the end of the double round robin was a massive moment for the team. I mean, you could see everyone literally a foot taller when you got back to the dock, and really then believe that we could go all the way. So those moments are massive for a team.
Yeah, I guess it's like that whole famous sort of saying about when luck and opportunity match and you make the thing happen, and you can sort of take it forward. So in that campaign then, as things started to look much more promising post the preliminary regatta phase, and you, like you say, you won the sail off in the round robins, and things started to really look like they were turning in our favour a little bit more, as well as the performances on the water. When did you start to think this may be a seriously good showing? When did you at that point, did you start to think, when was the moment where you thought we could be in with a shout here?
About 4 years ago. No, seriously, it doesn't really work like that. It's not that you, of course, the performance on the water is really key. But again, that, you know, the performance and when you start out, I don't know exactly, I haven't looked at all of the numbers yet, but you know, it's going to be somewhere around 10% improvement in performance for our team, and same for many of the teams. Certainly, I would say Lena Rosa and the Kiwis. And so, yeah, where you start out, where you end up is very different. And so, it's really about the basis of the beginning of the campaign, the strategy, you know, the program, how that's developing. And of course, you've got to believe in that from the start. And
so you're saying that the campaign is won or lost effectively. I mean, there are opportunities and chance and variables that come into the fore, but won or lost effectively in the first 6 months of building that cycle.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you know, of course, stuff happens along the way. Like we kind of nearly torched and sunk the test boat, and if that had actually gone down, that would have been pretty catastrophic for the campaign. But yeah, those decisions that you make in the early stages of the campaign, the strategy, where you can't undo that. Once you unleash that truck and off it goes, it really is, you know, it's very difficult to row back from those early decisions. You've got to get them right.
And yeah, and one of those really key decisions is the team that you have around you, and why you have the people that you have bolstering you and backing you up and everything else. And I suppose, did you need a really, obviously everyone needs a really solid team around them, but especially because you had this dual role of being on the boat, but also being the CEO as well, there must have been that played into that conversation about why you needed a Dave Endine who's solid as anything alongside you to make sure that you could actually deliver in both ways.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the people are everything. And certainly for me, having, you know, Dave was just immense, and you know, I couldn't have done the role that I did last time without Dave. It would have been impossible. You know, but not just Dave, the rest of the management team and the whole team. I mean, every person you could look at in Barcelona and back in Brackley with the Mercedes partnership, that they were pulling their weight and some and contributing massively. And that's what you want in a team.
And I guess also, like, they didn't panic when the preliminary regatta bit happened, because lots of them as well have been there, done that, got the T-shirt, right? You've now 3 campaigns in.
Yeah, that's right. And we had some disappointing, as I said, we had some disappointing results in the warm-up events and the AC40s. We had one event in Villanova, I think we were last. And then the next event in Jeddah, we were second to last, something like that. Yeah, so seriously poor showing, not what any of us were working towards, or our expectations were for the team. There were some reasons for that, which don't necessarily need to go into now, which we knew as a team. But still, those are really tough moments, and you have to regroup on the back of those and pull the team together and have some serious conversations and know how you're going to move forwards from that, which we did. And again, the way the team responded to those setbacks was for me so powerful, and really gave me the confidence that we had the team that could come back to whatever the setback was. We had a team that could respond well and fight all the way to the end.
And so, you know, everyone knows that you made history, which was brilliant, by getting that Louis Vuitton Cup in the end, but didn't ultimately win the prize that we went after in the first instance. Why do you think we didn't? What are the reasons why we didn't?
Well, fundamentally, the Kiwis were better than us. I mean, you can't shy away from that. You had to take your hat off and applaud them for an incredible achievement. Getting the three-peat, first team, I think, to get the three-peat in America's Cup. To my mind, I think that does mark them out as the best team in the history of the Cup. And yeah, so you have to respect that. Certainly we can learn a lot from that. And, you know, we set the team up 10 years ago to win the Cup. We're 10 years in. Each time we compete, we're getting one step closer. So the goal now is at least one more go around and get the job done. As each cycle, we're getting closer to that ultimate goal. But it's really about the team learning and developing. You know, the processes get more efficient, the design tools get more accurate, the development of the sailing team, you know, everything needs to come together perfectly. Of course it does, like in any other sporting event. But with the America's Cup, it's that constant development and evolution that is so powerful. And that's why you've seen the Kiwis now, I think, the longest competitive streak in the America's Cup, starting way back in 1987. It was the first time Team New Zealand competed for the America's Cup, and they've competed in every cup since. And okay, the people have changed along the way, but fundamentally it's still the same organization. Luna Rosa, been in the Cup 25 years, and again, people have changed somewhat over the years, but that's just a really slick operation. And for us, we're getting there. We're really, I mean, I'm really impressed with how the team's developed over the last 10 years. And the trick is now to learn from this last Cup and make those changes that we need to make, set the right strategy for AC38 and go and win it.
So what is, ultimately, obviously that's the goal, but have you given yourself any sort of time frame of how long it's going to take to actually deliver it, or do you just go again until it's won?
Good question. Yeah, ultimately, you set a goal. In my book, you set a goal, you got to achieve it, right? You know, no matter how long it takes, you got to keep going until you get the job done, which is probably not what you want to hear.
No, but it also means that you might not be on the boat.
Yeah.
So, because there'll be a point where you just cannot be on the boat anymore.
Yeah.
So that must be trickling around in the back of your head somewhere, or probably at the front of your head somewhere, like what that might look like. Is that as soon as next time, or when is that?
Well, no. You know, the honest answer is it's.
You don't know.
I don't know, but the honest answer is it's the team are going to win it. You know, it doesn't matter whether I'm on the boat or not. Of course, I'd love to be on the boat, but that's not really important. The important thing is that the team win. So I don't know. It's 3 years till the next Cup. You know, we'll make the right decision, like we did. You know, this time around, we'll put the best people on the boat that are going to make it. to give it the best chance to win.
And you're going to need
it's quite simple in my mind. It's not that hard.
You're going to need a war chest in order to do it. So where does that come from?
Yeah, so Jim and Ineos have been incredible backers for the last 2 campaigns. Effectively underwritten both campaigns, and they're keen to keep going. I think they really enjoyed the experience in Barcelona. Of course, like the rest of us, were really disappointed to get that far and not get the job done, but can see the gains that the team have made and the collaboration with Mercedes being so strong. So they're up for the fight. So that's how we tackle that. But if we need to bring in more partners, particularly commercial partners, to help unload the burden on Jim and Ineos. But I think also it's the right thing for the team for the long term to bring in more partners, and helps us in terms of our long-term stability and future.
What would you say, just sort of finishing off this cut piece, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned in the last, well, I suppose it's not just the last sort of few months, it's actually probably the last few years. In fact, it could even be the last 10 years, because that's how long this has been going on for. But I suppose in this most intense period that we're talking about, what would you say you've learned most?
I think there's reminders, the strategies. We talked about this. The strategy at the beginning is absolutely critical. If you get that wrong, it's pretty hard to row back from that. It's incredible how much development is in these boats and these teams, and what you can derive with hard work and a bit of grit and determination, and focusing in the right areas, the performance that you can unearn. And it was a reminder of that again in this cup, that the boat that's fastest right at the beginning isn't necessarily the boat that's fastest at the end, or the teams. There was, I think, a lot of, even before the prelim regatta, in the training that we were doing in Barcelona before the racing, there was plenty of ups and downs in all of the teams' performances. And so it's a reminder of, in a technical sport, just how much gains there always are, and you just got to keep pushing every day and all through the competition, got to be pushing for those gains. And then I guess from a personal perspective, I learned a few things about myself, about dealing with management, handling people, pressure, expectation, all of those things, which I think for all of us on our sort of life journeys, there's always these key moments where you come away and you know that you've learned a huge amount about yourself and other people, which is always interesting and mostly exciting.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is the biggest thing that you have learned about yourself in that process? I mean, someone was saying to me the other day, do you think Ben's changed over the course of this last campaign, or, and I definitely think there's been an evolution of character, because I definitely think you've had more things thrown at you this campaign than you would have had for previous ones. And also the weight of expectations there, because it's not the first time out, it's not the first rodeo. So there's all of that playing on the mind. And I guess that's, that's something that I've definitely been privy to and definitely witnessed. Would you say you've become the ultimate diplomat? I can see that. Someone says to me the other day, I would be really good in politics. But you would be good in politics, because you do have the ability to sort of not get fired up in the moment, but actually just step back and work out what it is that you want to say and what you want the outcome to be of what you're saying.
I'm talking to chippy journalists or commentators.
Yeah, well, there was that one though.
Sorry, commentators, not journalists. But that was good. I mean, that was actually, that was a good opportunity to spread a rallying cry.
Let's take that as an example, because that was actually savvier than most people would assume it was. That wasn't just reactionary, was it? And we're talking about the moment where you after one of the races in, I can't remember which round it was. It was actually quite far on. Was it in the
final? Final.
Yeah, in the cup. And you were challenged by one of the commentators on something or another, and you did or didn't realize that you were still on mic and happened to swear profusely as you stepped up from out of your cockpit. I mean, why did you say what you said? Not in the most obvious way, but what was it about that moment that actually you saw an opportunity in?
Yeah, so I've always been a believer in siege mentality, and I've seen that in other sports, and I've experienced it. I experienced it with Oracle in 2013 when we were 8-1 down, and of course we managed to somehow, against all the odds, come back and win it 9-8, and that was a siege mentality moment. And I've experienced it in my Olympic sailing, and I've seen it in many other sports. And had a fascinating conversation with Jose Mourinho over dinner many years ago, talking through it. So I do believe in that. And in that instance, we were 4-0 down in the America's Cup. We were really struggling. We just couldn't match the performance of the Kiwis. And in those moments, something's got to give, right? Because if you just status quo is not going to, totally not going to work for you.
Yeah.
And I just had this opportunity with the commentator.
Wound you up.
I can't remember the guy's name.
Maybe
but yeah, he obviously clearly a little bit biased, being a staunch Kiwi. That's fair enough. But he was just a little bit cocky.
I'm not even sure he did. When you listen back to it,
a little bit cocky on the snide.
You meant what he meant.
I was just waiting.
You had the moment.
I was looking for an opportunity, and he kind of offered it up for me. And I knew that the guys, in those instances, you can either turn your comms pack off so the team can hear you, or you can keep it on. And I kept it on, and so I knew everyone could hear me. And it was just this comment, and
it's a podcast, so you can say
it's how's your performance looking now, kind of thing. As in, you just gone 4-0 down. You still happy with your performance? It's like, oh, fuck off. So I just said that I think that's the Kiwi commentator in you, and left it a couple of seconds, knowing that the guys could still hear me. To be honest, I didn't know whether or not I was still broadcasting, but it really didn't matter at that point. And then called him a fucking wanker under my breath. And people that I know, the response to the team was just, I walked around the other side of the boat, and the guys were like, yes, come on.
Yeah.
And
then you won the next 2 races.
That's what you're looking for, because you're looking for a bit of a rallying cry, and that was just a great opportunity to offer that up. And yeah, it's if the response was good, how much difference it really made to how we said. Obviously, we won the next 2 races the next day because the conditions were slightly different and more in our favour. Ultimately, we still went on and lost the cup. But yeah, so that was really the background to that.
You sometimes become manipulative too. That's what you've
learned
about yourself for the last 6 weeks.
Never.
You've learned how to be manipulative. So one of the key things as well, I think another key takeaway from the cup is this relationship you've now got with Dylan. And actually, that was completely untried and untested. And, I love how much of a terrier he is, because he comes knocking on your door all of the time in the lead up to the cup going, give me a chance, give me a chance, give me a chance. And you gave him a chance, and he obviously stepped up really, really well. Now he's stepped into the Sail GP boat because Giles has gone to Canada.
Yeah.
And so what was behind the thinking of putting him as the helm on the Sail GP boat? And we're sort of in the build up to that now. And so what are your sort of early thoughts about how you want that to pan out?
Yeah, look, I was really impressed with Dylan, how he stepped up through the campaign, joining the team. And I think I've talked about this before. It's a good lesson because you're never really sure with people. I didn't know Dylan that well. Obviously knew he was a brilliant sailor, but as a person, I didn't really know him that well. And that was always the risk. You bring someone from the outside in, and obviously someone like that who's got the talent and is clearly going to want to make a mark. How is that going to affect the team, that disruption? So it took quite...
Don't you need a little bit of that though? Don't you need a little bit of that?
Yeah, you do, but if it goes too much, it goes the wrong way, it can really destroy a team. So you got to be careful. And it took, quite a lot of, to think long and hard about whether we should bring him in. He came and did some trials with us down in Palma, and he was great, and he was really trying hard to fit in with the team. And so we went with it. And then through the training that we did, particularly with the AC40, we did some 2-boat sailing in the AC40s last year. And again, he really stepped up well. He was sailing with some of the youth sailors coming through, so he had a lot on. He had to try and help develop their skills. They'd never really sailed on a boat like that before. And also take on racing Giles and I with the full AC race crew. And he did a great job and really pushed hard. And, you could see that he's a fighter. He's got that, winning spirit that you see in people that have had the success that he has had. And
Do you
Yeah,
see
there was just
yourself
something
in
about
him?
it. There
Do
was
you see
just something.
yourself
Well,
in
there
him
was
a
just
little bit?
something about it that instinctively felt he could really make a difference getting on the boat. Not just in how he raced the boat, but in helping derive the performance from the boat. Because every day you're out there in the training beforehand, it's really critical that you're pushing hard, you're giving the right feedback to the designers and engineers, and it really felt to me that he could help us take that up a gear, and he did.
Do you, going back to that question that I interrupted you on, do you see a little bit of yourself in him? Can you see little attributes there that remind you of you?
Maybe we're all different, aren't we? But
Well, I hope so, but yeah.
definitely that drive and determination.
Yeah, he's got that.
Is there. He's got that.
And so now he's part of this SailGP adventure. And so what are your hopes for this season? Because we haven't won that yet. You've now stepped off that boat. So you've got to step into it and assume a different role. Are you comfortable with that? Are you going to be all right with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, I did that last season with Giles, and yeah, of course I'd like to be out there racing. SailGP is just the best racing you can do. Okay, America's Cup is also great, but it's a different level. It's a very different kind of event. SailGP, 14 events this next season, fleet racing in those F50s and a really tight race course. It's just awesome. And so I would love to do it, but at the same time, I got to be realistic about what's going on. We've got SailGP, we've got the America's Cup. We've got to really focus now on this America's Cup team making, as I said earlier, making the right strategic calls. How are we going to take on the Kiwis? How are we going to beat the Kiwis? And it's clear for me that's my focus has got to be on that, and helping in terms of the management of the SailGP team, and putting Dylan on the boat with Hannah, with the rest of the team. That now I think is a really good group that can take the team into the future on the water.
How are you going to find it when we're sat in that corporate lounge, chatting away to people and maybe having a swig of champagne or whatever it might be, and then out there on the ocean waves is your sailboat bombing around the place with other people on it? You going to be all right with that?
Yeah, no, I'm going to be good.
Is it time?
I'm going to be good.
Is it time to sort of start working out what the next bit looks like?
Yeah, because we've got such a great opportunity with SailGP off the water as well. We've got some fantastic partners with Emirates in particular, and low carbon, and
Ainslie and
Ainslie, of course, and some really good conversations that we're having about new partners coming in. So from a business perspective, I think SailGP has got huge potential, and it's great to see the sport developing that way. And that's really where I can help the most, is leading the team, making sure that we support the league. Russell and the team leading the league are doing a fantastic job. It's our job as teams to support that. And again, I think it's a great opportunity for the sport, and really, really important that it is the success that it can be.
And I guess capitalizing on the fact that, and this is sort of just to round it all up, but capitalizing on the fact that the Cup created this surge of interest in sailing, and it can do that sometimes. It has the capacity to do that. It's a bit like one of those outlier events, isn't it? Like the Olympics, which comes around every 3 to 4 years. It's a bit of a random one in that the defender controls everything.
Yeah.
And so you never quite know what you're going to get. But at the same time, it can produce amazing storylines. And ours became its own storyline because we started from here and then just kept building. And everyone started to believe what might yet be possible, and that history could be made. So capitalizing on that moment and being able to sort of push sailing into the spotlight again. I mean, how much has the Cup done for you as a favor in terms of putting sailing once again in the headlines?
Yeah,
it's never going to be mainstream like football, but at least it's got the potential now to definitely develop in that way.
It might maybe struggle to get to the heights of football, but I think it can be a much bigger sport. And I think the Cup, this last Cup, was a great spectacle. The numbers, I haven't seen the final numbers. I've seen some of the reports that have come through on the media numbers, both for our team and for the event, and they're a massive step up from where they were in Auckland. And okay, in Auckland we had COVID and all the rest of it, but Barcelona, the competition that we had, that Louis Vuitton final was just some of the best racing you're going to see, and I think really compelling for a sailing and a non-sailing audience. So yeah, it is a really exciting period for the sport with SailGP and the America's Cup, and they're both growing at a great trajectory. I think the trick with the America's Cup is always that you mentioned it, it's slightly quirky in that the winner, the defender, owns the rights and the regulations for the next event. And how can we develop a more consistent future for the Cup so that the teams and the sponsors and the media know what they're up for and they can really build and develop that. Yes, the winner has to retain the majority of the rights and the value from winning it. Of course they do, that's only right. But if we can create a more economically viable future for the Cup, then everyone's going to win. And that's certainly something that we would love to try and help Grant Dalton and Team New Zealand to do that and develop the Cup so that it has a much more exciting future commercially.
Final question. This pod focuses primarily on a moment in time. Ultimately, this didn't end up being the moment in time that you really desperately wanted it to be, but we got very, very close. If you were saying over the course of that campaign what the moment was that you most enjoyed or you took away from it as being the key moment, and whatever that might be, whether it was defining for the campaign or whether it was something that you will just always hold very close to you, what would that be?
Yeah, I talk about it a lot, but it really was the near sinking of the test boat.
Really?
That was, I can't tell you how tough a moment that was. You know, the boat was upside down, it was on fire, it was sinking. And then we had this diver had to go in, you know, under submerged hatch to put buoyancy bags in there to stop it sinking, and sort of come back. So it took us 5 or 6 hours to salvage the thing, get it back to the dock, get it into the shed, and you're sort of standing there with 80 odd people, and it's kind of a campaign defining moment. And being able to look at every one of those people in the eye and know that they were up for rebuilding the boat. It was going to take us months to rebuild it, to get it back out of the water. And they did. They were up for it, and they did it, and they did a brilliant job. And yeah, that's when you know that you've got a team.
Okay. So we go again. As Bellatrix said to you the other day, here we go again. She has such a good way of putting it.
It's really tough.
I love the way she just went, you came back from your meeting and it was like, okay, all guns blazing in this direction. She just went, oh, Daddy, here we go again.
It's great to have
Your laughing fox is very true.
family support.
Yeah, of that you do. Okay, so that's obviously where the future is headed, and also be really good to have a great season in SailGP. I can't believe how many races there are. I'm glad you're not sailing them all. Join us for the Performance People podcast every week for the highs, lows, lessons and stories from people like this lot. Michael Johnson.
Some days what I would see is a person who is a shell of what I used to be.
Eddie Hearn.
We don't operate in a business that's dangerous, but we just operate in one where you've got to sleep with one eye open.
Mo Farah.
It couldn't get any harder than what I've gone through. And at that point, I just kind of just went for it.
Paula Radcliffe.
You can only control yourself.
Susie Wolf.
And Toto did once liken me to a donkey.
Every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts.